Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Flutter tutorial. And I must say this is the second time I'm recording this because I just sat here speaking to myself without pressing the record button, so yeah. Anyway, let's get on with it. So in this video we are going to look at how we can validate forms and how we can refactor our code into separate modules and look at how we can use a function. Okay, so let's get on to it. So mostly when you're working in Flutter, your main.dat file, okay, you want to leave it alone as much as possible. So we want to leave just this and not do anything in here. You may come here, do some theme customizations and other things, but for the most part we want to leave this file alone. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to create a new file. So I'll go to the lib folder, so the lib folder where we have main.dat. I'm going to right click and click on new, and I'm going to call this the same name I called this, so homepage, but in lowercase, so home, and then in snake case using the underscore page dot dart, so a dart file, and then let's import the material package. Then let's go back to main.dat and then let's cut everything to the end. Then we go back to the home page and then we paste this in here. Now we have errors all over the place, and the reason is that this home page doesn't know what Google Fonts is. Now this main.dat doesn't also know what home page is. And also it is complaining like you haven't used this import, so why keep it there? And this is from errorlines. So what I'll do is I'll cut this import, Control X. I'll go back to the home page, and at the very top, man, so many lines, I would paste this in there, and that solves the Google font issue. Now I'll go back to main.dat and then satisfy this simply by clicking on this, pressing Control period, and then simply do what, import the home page. And now it is happy, it is not complaining anymore. So for the most part we want to leave this very lean, and we can save this, and then we can enter our favorite value, which is 1000, and hit calculate, and everything still works. Okay, now let's tackle form validation. So for us to do a form validation, we need to create something called a form key. Okay, so we are not going to do anything here anymore. So let me quickly run back to the homepage file. So at the very top, right here, under this, it could be on top, we are going to create a form key, and then we can do this by saying we want to create a global key which has a type of form state, not form field state. And then what do I want to call this? So this is where you name it. So this part is the type, just as we would say double, which is the type, and then this is the name. So this entire part is a type, and of course it's a form key, so let me call it form key. And then this we are going to call the global key constructor, and then we can pass in the type here also as form state, just like this, and then we can close this. Now if you go through the Flutter docs, they simply create this using the final keyword. Okay, and you can do this. Now the final keyword, there's a constant keyword. There's a separate video that we'll go through where we discuss the difference between these two and when and how to use them. Okay, so for now you can just say final form key, or what I did earlier. I'll stick with this for now. Where do we use this then? Because errorlines is complaining we haven't used it anywhere. So what I'll do is I would go to this form. So I hope I can find it. So right here, we need to wrap this text form field in another widget called form. This is necessary to get our validation to work. So Control period or full stop, wrap widget, and then we would call this form, just like so. And in the form widget, we are just going to give it has a property called key, and we are just going to give it what? The key we created, form key. That is the only thing we are going to touch in the form widget. That's all. Any other thing we are going to do is going to be in the text form field. So I don't like doing this at the top. We want to access something called a validator, but I don't like doing that at the top. It's personal reasons, I don't know, that's just me. So I would rather do this at the bottom. So I have to make sure that I am in the text form field. So we can follow this pink line, and you can see this is where it ends. So I need to be inside here. Then I can call this validator. Okay. And then this is an anonymous function, meaning a function that doesn't have a name. But for now, don't worry about functions. There will be a video for that. And this has a return type. It's going to take a string. And then we're going to open this parenthesis. And then this is where we perform our validation. So what are you trying to check from your form before you allow anything to go on? Well, in our case, we want to make sure that this isn't empty or it isn't null. So what I'm going to do is, God, my dogs and puppies are all over the place. So what I'm going to do is, I am going to say that if, so the value, okay, the value that we have in here corresponds to whatever the user gives us. So in case it's 1000, yeah, we check. So whatever our controller brings. So if the value is equal to null, or, so how do we say or? We cannot do this, but to do that, we are going to use a pipe symbol on the keyboard. Now it's just a straight line. I don't know how to describe it, but on my keyboard, just right after the what do you call it, the quotes, so single quote and double quotes, that's why I have it. It differs from other keyboards, so just make sure you check and you would find it. It's usually on top of the / key most of the time, but just check. So I'm going to hold shift, and then we use 2 pipe symbols just like that. Now in case you wanted to say and, so if this value is now and, then you would say we use the ampersand symbol, so 2 of these. That's how we check for 2 things to be correct before we move on. But in our case, we are checking for either, and then we can call our value. We use the dot operator and we access this as empty. So we are simply saying that if whatever value returned here is null, or whatever value here is returned is empty, then what we want to do? We simply want to return a string, because this anonymous function returns a string. Again, if you are not understanding what this return is, don't worry. We are just getting back whatever we are going to type here. Okay, we are getting whatever we type here so that it shows under, and you'll soon see that. But again, when we talk about functions, you get to understand what this means. So all I'm going to type is, please enter a valid amount. This is something like that. And if I can spell amount, how do you spell amount? Is it like this? I hope so. And then this is the main thing I want to check. But if there's nothing like that, meaning that this condition was false, then I just want to go ahead and return, oops, come on. I just want to go ahead and return null. So I'm returning nothing. That's just all this is saying. Now, after we do this, we are not yet done, unfortunately. We then have to go back to where the onPress happens, which is the calculate button. So when we hit calculate, we actually want to check if our form has been validated, if all those things we check have been caught, or there's no issue. It isn't null, and then it isn't empty. If that is all correct, if all that is validated, then we can go ahead and then execute all this code that is here. Okay, so the way we are going to do that is very, very simple. First, I'm going to cut all of this, so Control X, and then we would say that if the form key we created, so underscore form key, and then using the dot operator, we access the current state. And I'm going to do something here, but don't get confused. I'm going to put an exclamation here, and then a dot operator here, and then call validate. Now, this is a feature in null safety in Dart that you have to implement. So if I take this off, it's going to complain. Okay, it's going to talk about. So there's a possibility that this could return null. And since we are writing this, we are trying to say, hey, you know what? This is not going to return null ever. Okay, so putting it there, just we know what we are doing. But again, if you don't understand this, there will be separate videos for all of these things to come. Okay, so we are simply saying that if we access our form key and we get the current state of the form and we validate it, if this returns true, okay, then we want to go ahead and execute our code. So I'll paste back the code I copied. Let me format this as Shift Alt F, okay, to format this. So once this is validated, this code will run. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. And in fact, let me hot restart and hot reload this so that everything is back to normal. So let's go ahead and test this. Now I'm not going to type in anything, and I'm going to hit calculate. And now you can see we are catching that empty field condition we put in here. So it is empty. So we have the text here, please enter a valid amount, what we've typed in here. So you can use this for other things. So if this were to be a password field and you wanted the password to be greater than 6 characters, then you can say if val is greater than or equal to 6 or less than 6, then you make your whatever you want to return, you simply put that in. I'm sure you've had such things when you are using other apps and then you don't meet their requirements, they give you that error. But once we enter, let's say, our value here and hit calculate, everything is still going to work. Everything is going to still get validated. I hope that was okay. So this is just the basics of form validation. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is to extract all of this into a function. This is a lot going on. Okay, this is a lot going on. And functions are very, very useful in programming. So again, I'm not really going to probably explain a lot about functions because I'm going to dedicate a separate video for that. So what I'll do here is I'm going to cut everything. So just gauging this bracket. So this is where it ends. I'm going to cut everything here. So Control X, and I'm going to just type calculate. This is the name of our function. I'm yet to create it, so it is complete. It doesn't know the method called that. Then I'm going to go all the way up. It's just a convention to create your functions at the topmost part of your program. So in this case, I'm not going to create it in here, but I'm going to create it inside this state page. And then I'm going to type this void calculate like so and open parentheses. So again, like I said, there's a reason for this void, okay, and we'll talk about functions in a whole. But simply, if I'm going to make an attempt, functions can bring back something or not, and this just says this function is not going to bring back anything, void, like empty, nothing. Okay, this is the name of the function, and then this is a function signature. So functions, they always have this, and there's a use for it. We'll talk about it. And then inside this parenthesis is the body, what you want to do in your function, what you want your function to do. So I'm now going to paste back all that I copied, and let's format this with Shift Alt F. The reason why I'm pasting this in this state widget class is that set state can only be found here. If I had put it here, then we'd have an issue, and we have to update this. Okay, so that is something you have to consider. And if we go back down, you can see that our calculator is there. If I simply save this, reload this, and then I hit calculate, we still get caught. You know what? Here's a tip. If this keyboard popping up is pissing you off, you can press the keyboard symbol right here on your emulator, and then you can turn this off, and it will stop popping up each time you click here. Okay, if you want it back, just click here and then turn it on, but I don't want it back for now. So let's enter a value and then hit calculate, and everything should work still. So basic of a function, that's just how functions work. And a function is just a label we wrap around a bunch of code that work together. So if I take you back up, you can see that all of these work together. Okay, and if I needed this somewhere, I have to copy all of this and go and paste. It's going to be a lot, so I am just wrapping everything under this one name. And when I need it, when I need that functionality, I simply do what? Just call it by typing the name. So if I can find calculate, so I just type calculate, and then it simply goes here and then executes everything that is here. Quite simple. Okay, but like I said, there's going to be a separate video for functions. Okay, and one other thing I'll do to our function is, and in fact these variables, I'm going to try and simplify these a bit. We've created so many variables here, and we don't actually need all of these. If we check this, we are only using the total bill amount here, and then we are also using the tip amount. So we don't necessarily have to put all of these here and then use them here. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to use the final keyword. So final, again, a separate video for all of this. And then the tip index too, I'm going to put in final, and then the tip percent, I'm going to put in final. And then, so that means that I don't necessarily need a bill amount here. I need the total bill amount because that's what I'm using here. So the tip index and then the tip percent, I don't also need them, so I can remove them. So that's a little bit leaner, and then we have everything here. I am leaving these two because we are using them within our code here, total bill amount. And there's a concept of local variables and global variables. So when something is global, think globally, so outside of the box. So globally, it is outside and exposed to every widget out here. So anything, any widget here can access this too. But any of these that are inside here cannot be accessed by anything outside of these brackets. Okay, so if I grab this, cut it out, and then I paste this in here. Okay, it doesn't know what the hell this is. Okay, so I didn't even mean to put it here. Actually, let me put it here at the top. No problem. But then if we scroll back to the bottom, we are going to have a problem because it cannot see this. Okay, this variable only belongs to that function calculate. It only belongs to this function once it's inside the parentheses here, and we can make it a global variable by simply taking it outside and then putting it where it was, just like this. I hope that made some sense. Again, there will be a separate video for you to understand these properly. So let me save this, and then everything should still work. Yeah, everything is still working. So the final thing I'll do, which may be just a little bit complicated, is if we look at this code still, we could still do a lot of work, but we would enter a territory that might be quite difficult to understand as beginners. So I want to move this because it's really stretched out everything. Okay, so I want to look for the main thing housing it, and it's this container, because the toggle buttons child to this container. So the way we can extract this as a widget on its own is to place our pointer on the container press Control period, and in VS Code, we can simply say extract widget. Now if I click here and I give it the name my toggle btn and I hit enter, we run into an error. Okay, reference to an enclosing class method cannot be extracted, and that's fine. The main reason for, if I can close this, the main reason for this error is that this this guy here has a set state, and anytime you extract a widget, it extracts it into a stateless widget. So that's the conflict. So I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to select the set state and I'm going to comment this out. I haven't talked about comment, and that is something I should have done like on the onset, so forgive me. So let me quickly do that. Anytime you want to write some text, okay, leave a reminder for yourself. Okay, you don't want it to be read as code. So for example, inside here, if I say get some, I know this is not going to make sense, but get some milk tomorrow, if I can spell tomorrow like so, the program thinks, well, what is all of this? This doesn't make sense. It's trying to run this. Okay, but if I want this to be a comment for just for me to see when I'm coding, I'm like, okay, I need to get some milk, then I'll simply place my pointer at the very beginning and then use my / key twice. So // and now this is a comment. It doesn't think of this as a code, and when we execute this, it doesn't run it. Okay, well, I'll talk about it in a separate video. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. So using this technique, I'm going to select everything in the set state, and then if you want to comment out this, so you might be thinking, then why I should be doing this, then doing this, then doing this. Yeah, that'll work, but that's a lot of work. Okay, so the way you simply do that is select everything you want to comment out and press Control / and that simply does that for you. Okay, now let's go back to our container, Control period, and then let's extract this widget. I will call it my toggle btn and then hit enter. And this time you notice that it works. But where is this guy now? Well, usually at the bottom. If you scroll to the bottom, you realize this is a class on its own. Okay, this is a class on its own. And so what I'll do is I'm going to cut this class. So just like we did with the home page, I'm going to cut this class, and then we would create a new Dart file and then call it my _toggle _btn .dart, and then we hit enter. Then we paste this in there. A lot of trouble because we don't have the material package, so let's import that also, Control period and then material packaging. And then we still have some issues because when we were in the home page, we had these set of variables. So okay, I'm already here. We had this set of is selected we were using, but this is only here now. The my toggle buttons are in a different file. So how do we fix this? Well, first off, let me import the my toggle button. So let me place this, Control period, and then let's import that. So how then do we go about fixing this issue? Well, it isn't anything complicated, but for the beginning, you may struggle to understand it a bit, but I'll try my best to make this as simple as possible. So if you go back to my toggle, it is complete. I don't know this guy. So we are actually going to create this, but before that, let me switch this or uncomment this back. So as usual, like I said, set state cannot be found in a stateless widget. So we need to convert this to a stateful widget. So we can do that by clicking on the stateless, Control period, and then we convert to that. So the stateful part, no issue, but we still have this to contend with. We know that the selector that we have in the home page is what? A list of booleans. So we can come back here and then inside this widget right here, on top of the override, I'm going to create that variable. So I'm going to call it final, and this is going to be a list, and then I'm going to say this list is going to contain only boolean types, and then I'm going to call it selected. Now once you do this, this is something called a constructor, but again, don't worry about that. We have to initialize all final values inside here, and we do that simply. Now I could use the shortcut on the squiggly lines, control period, and just say add final field like that, okay? Or we can do it ourselves by simply typing using this, use a dot operator, and then selected. Let's add our comma. But this is still complaining. Well, this is another thing with null safety, but I'm not going to talk much about it. The way we can solve this is to simply make this a required field by passing in required here. And this simply says that anytime I use this my toggle button, I have to provide this selected, which is what? A list of booleans. Okay? And then I have to use it here. So now I'm going to go ahead and just remove this underscore since we don't have it, but you notice it's still not working. Now, anytime we have variables here, we want to access them, we need to use widget property and use a dot operator, and then we can access whatever we have in here. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy everything and then go to all the places that need this and simply replace them. So this place, and then is that all? Yeah, that's all. And now when I go back to the home page, you'd notice that the toggle buttons that we have down here, if I can find it, is complaining. Now it is saying that the name parameter is selected, it's required, but there's none. Of course, because we did say that if you are going to use this toggle buttons, we have to do what? Supply is selected. So when I call my toggle buttons, it needs this required selected property. And remember, this selected property is what? A list of bools. Now when I come back here, inside here, I can just start typing selected, and then so you can see this is a list, it's expecting a list. You can see list bool. So when I tap this, it's a bit satisfied, but I have to provide a list. So I could have put in my true and false and true in here, but we have it already, right? Remember, we created a list of bools that it was using earlier, which is right here, selected. So what I can do is I can go back and then pass that selected inside here, and that should tell it to keep quiet, stop crying. I'm going to save everything, hot restart, hot reload, and now we can run this app again. So let me just get that out of the way. So if I hit calculate, our error handling still works. We still validate our form. So let's put in our favorite 1000 and hit calculate. Still works, and still works. Okay, so I hope that wasn't too much to sort of understand what is going on. But as you can see, this homepage was about 200 plus lines of code. But from what we've done, you can see we are just up to 174. We could have still done more, but if we continue, we would enter into some territories that I consider being a beginner might be a little bit difficult to deal with. Okay, so I hope this video has at least given you some insight as to how we can make our code modular, a little bit about functions, and as I've promised you, we are going to have functions on its own video. Okay, so this is going to be it, guys, and if you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you learned something from it, please subscribe to the channel for more, and of course share. This has been Happy Cat.